Hi, and welcome back to episode 2 now of these conversations you're kind of listening in on. What we're calling "What the hell is this?" Because we're unpacking and investigating what it is that's happening around us through the lens of sense making, or at least that's my goal. I'm Mike, and we've got Saqib. Hi, Saqib.
Hi everyone, I'm back again.
Thank
Week
you.
2. And seems like there was this funny thing happening, Mike, just before you started, when you asked the kids at home to turn off the YouTube to save the bandwidth. They actually called out the name of this podcast. What the hell? Why do we have to turn off the videos? So I was laughing in here because I could overhear, and it's normal for them to think, what the hell is this?
It is, it's quite funny. I leave the room and then they're yelling and screaming and whatever. So they're downstairs now. So hopefully it's only a dull rumble from down there that you'll pick up on this recording. But it's true. They said, "What the hell?" They probably shouldn't be so rude to us, but they are like, "What the hell is going on?" Because it's such a simple thing. But they were watching YouTube and having a nice time, and we said, "Oh, you can watch it for a little bit until later." And then all of a sudden, the world's changed. I'm saying, "No, it's over. You can't do it." So what the hell? I like that one. I reiterated my goal. What's your goal, Saqib? Generally, or just for today, or this week? I don't know.
Generally, my goal, I think the last time was also that let's read more. I want to make people think, because let's think. Because for me, my goal is that sometimes we read, but it's not enough just to understand the things intellectually, but actually to apply them. So when we read something, let's just apply it and see, can it be applied? If not, why? And where the resistance comes from application. Is it a risk to apply it, what we just read? Or is it coming from us, or is it a risk to the task and its outcomes? So yeah, that's my goals, that let's talk about things and can I actually apply them next week. So yeah.
That's excellent. I feel like a bunch of things that I've been reading and getting passionate about over the last sort of, I don't know, five years have all come to a head now with this COVID thing. It's really exposed and put a lot of pressure on what works and what doesn't work, but also opportunity. And so we're going to go, the first topic for today, we'll talk about COVID-19 stuff, and Saqib, you lead that, but I'm going to throw a little bit of a teaser in so that people can get excited. So I read this book a few years ago, and I'm sure a lot of people are excited about the concepts in this, Reinventing Organizations by Frederick Laloux. And it's fantastic, but there's one piece in there that I want to circle back to later, and that is, why don't we have a stove for cooking, a cooking stove in the kitchen at the office? And but hold that thought, please, and let's just talk about COVID-19.
All right. Yeah, you just distracted me with the stove in the office. But okay, we'll come back to that. With COVID, did you realize that last week on the television news, especially in New South Wales News, we saw the premier saying that alcohol purchase has raised in New South Wales households by 70%. And the first thing, my knee-jerk reaction was, I was feeling guilty because I had been purchasing alcohol and I've been consuming it more. But then, is this data, does that data really make sense? Is it not skewed because all our pubs are closed? So, collectively, the citizens are not really using the pubs. They're not doing Friday drinks. They're not going to the pubs. And we know that a majority of our alcohol consumptions happen from the pub. So those are not there. And we are just counting how much we are purchasing. Because we are at home, obviously the purchase will go higher. But in order to really compare, we have to see the alcohol consumption before COVID by the pubs and the people in the city collectively, and the alcohol consumption now. Because that's not what they did, but they are making us all feel guilty, I believe, by just saying that 70% increase in individual household purchase of alcohol. What do you think of that?
I think what you're saying sounds about right. All of that's happening in pubs and clubs and wherever people go. A 70% increase doesn't sound unreasonable, considering generally people are out or even at work functions and various things. I don't think we should look. I'm not much of a drinker, so my intake has not changed at all. So it's the same, nothing really.
Oh, and why is that? There are no Moscatos in the.
Yeah, you're funny. I do have
Yeah.
one on the shelf there. I think a Moscato. It's, and I can go and buy more Moscato if I wish, but I don't know. It just doesn't do it for me. And probably a side tangent. I've got this theory that I think people drink. There's a funny relationship between the drinking and the socializing, and I kind of put my pessimist hat on and say everyone just wants to go and do social events and party and visit people so that they can drink. And I wonder if that's true, and I wonder if that's confronting if you're stuck at home. A lot of people are pulling their hair out about being stuck at home. I don't know what that means. They're still drinking. What does that mean? They're not doing the socializing in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
They're all doing Friday afternoon drinks on Zoom with wine at your own. You're probably doing this, and I don't understand it. That's just me, though.
Oh yeah, yes. I think I'm doing it more than before because I have these individual group meetings with friends from different places, and each time I have to sit with a drink because our rule is that you have to sit only one condition: have your camera on and have a glass of drink.
Yeah. There's another thing where you have to have your camera on, but that's a whole different website.
Yeah. All right. And talking about
before we move on, the toilet paper is in the same category as alcohol, right?
Oh, all right. Yes. So what's up with that? I think I am not one of the toilet paper purchasers, so I don't know.
Okay, so slight backstory. My wife is a toilet paper, well, not hoarder, but stockpiler anyway. So she in our previous house, the second bathroom had the shower cubicle full of toilet paper. That's just like, okay, yeah, it's there. I don't need to think about it. She's a bit mental, to be honest. And so these times came, and then everyone's buying it, and we're like, yeah, but we normally buy a lot anyway. It's frustrating to only be able to buy a pack of 4 or whatever, but we're okay because we've got a bit from 6 months ago anyway.
6 months ago.
So she would buy like a big amount. It's not, we didn't get to this time, and it's like, whoa, we better, But what is happening is the same problem as the alcohol. So there's 2 channels of distribution for toilet paper, and there's 2 places that you're going to use it. Right? You're going to use it at work. People are using it at work all day. Look, I'll be honest. I'm a home guy when it comes to that. But some people like to get it into the schedule at work, and women, don't have an option there. They're going to use toilet paper all day long anyway. So this is we're really right in the gutter here with this conversation. I'll just call it out. We'll get us out of there in a sec. But the point is that the consumption through that channel has completely closed down. So we're buying, I heard a number, something like 40 or 50% more through the domestic retail channel, simply because we're spending all this time at home. So on the surface, we blamed everyone for hoarding behavior, for making these human judgments. But really, it's not. It's just a matter of, I'm home all day. I need more, and so I need to go and buy it. It was about that. Another thing I read, and this was in the US, probably not sure about in Australia, but in the US certainly, the distribution from basically a tree to a toilet paper roll is completely separate in the retail and the domestic, because bigger rolls for the work market, for the industrial market, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
It's a bigger roll, goes onto a different fitting. It's bought in bulk. The paper's different. Everything's different, and it's very hard for them to then switch over and start selling that in the retail environment because it's packaged wrong, it doesn't work, all of that kind of thing. Although I did see at my local IGA these massive rolls, and then I also saw on Twitter or somewhere some guy with a drill. He had these massive rolls, and he had a drill, and he was with a small used normal toilet paper roll, and just like speed winding off the big roll onto smaller rolls to put onto his holder in his bathroom.
Oh, that's...
There's a lot of double handling, right? So I think the same thing's happening. We're blaming everyone. We're putting these human judgments on things when there's just been a bit of a system change around how things flow about. Alcohol and toilet.
All right. So that means we are not looking at the right numbers, right? We are just using the wrong numbers to show the peak instead of considering, as you said, all the other ways it used to be consumed, which needs to be deducted.
Actually. Yeah, there's multiple hard numbers to look at, right? And that would tell a different story. We're only looking at some hard numbers and then creating all this qualitative judgment storyline, this plausible story that people are stupid idiots and or people are depressed, alcoholics, to make a plausible story out of that narrow hard number. But if you look at the broad hard numbers, it can tell a quite different story. So it gets back to that plausibility thing that I'm really interested in around sense making. We all see information and we all have experiences, but it's the plausible stories that we can come up with that matter.
Thank you. So now I can justify my increase in buying more alcohol.
Yeah, exactly. You could even make a case to say, well, maybe it's gone down.
Exactly.
Who would know?
Yes.
Yeah.
And how is social distancing working for you? So I personally think that we are thinking of the social distancing and we are, how it's affecting us.
Mm-hmm.
But didn't we already have this inert social distancing anyway? We used to get on trains and be busy with our mobile phones. We used to be distancing people anyways before, but for a different reason and through a different mechanism. What do you think of that?
Well, I think it's different people at different contexts, right?
Right.
It's a really interesting point. Have I talked about the 15-minute city idea?
No.
Yeah. Okay, so this is going back a bit. I should take notes on how I can work my way back. Okay, so I was going on to a friend of mine, Mark Bergen, who runs the Design Executives and Driven by Design awards. And I was raving on to him about how this COVID thing is forcing communities back to the micro. And I think that's fantastic. And I had always thought that it's kind of strange that I come from my suburb, pluck myself up out of that suburb where I've got some roots, but not really, go to the city, do some stuff there in a bit of a bubble. But I don't really care about the people who have shops and, restaurants or local services in the city because I live in my suburb. And I kind of don't care about the other people in the suburb who don't do the exact same kind of white collar work that I do. I feel a bit weird that there's out of place with some of the people in my neighborhood, and that's okay. I'd prefer to know them and be part of that blend. It's odd that we pull us. Anyway, so Paris, somewhere along the line, Paris, the mayor of Paris has said, okay, we want it to be a 15-minute city for this reason, so that you don't have to go too far away. My plan was a lot more tyrannical. My idea, instead of calling it a 15-minute city, I was going to say, by the way, I'm the new Prime Minister of Australia to enact my new law, which is you're not allowed to travel more than, say, 2 to 5 kilometers for your everyday work and activities. You can go outside, obviously, for other reasons, things like a holiday or special, trips or, interesting shopping or whatever it might be. But your everyday thing should be within a tightly bound geographic. They did it by time, and I think it's a little bit smarter because it's a bit more of a nicer way to motivate people. And you can talk about the persuasive stuff if you want.
All right. Yeah.
With the story. But that was useful. So why am I telling you the story? What was your question originally?
I was thinking that didn't we already distance ourselves before, hiding in our phones? Yeah.
If you get from my tiny pod silo here to the work one, I don't want to talk to these people in the middle. They're idiots. I don't know them. They're not idiots. I'd love to know them. I'd love to actually, when I sit on the bus or the train, I think, why don't we have a conversation? I imagine in my mind, South America would talk on the train. I don't know why. These Latin countries in my mind would have a good chat on the train, but I don't know if that's accurate. You go on.
Yeah, I like the idea of 15-minute city. So I don't know if this was done already in Barcelona or not, because when I used to live here, that's exactly the same. Like everything is so available, all the essential needs you are supposed to have, like a post office and all the, the baker, the groceries, and even pharmacies and hospitals, you can get within a 2-kilometer radius. So you actually don't have to travel out unless you're going to the beach or going to the uni, or watching a football match. Do you think that was planned? So that's why people didn't have to go out? Because I remember just having, everything was walking distance. Yeah.
I think it might happen naturally as a byproduct of population density in countries other than Australia. Australia is very broad and spread out, right? You might have to travel half an hour in the car to get to something that's not available earlier than that. Very much a car suburban sprawl type country here. So that's my lens talking about it. But I have a feeling that countries that have constricted land mass and a very, very high population, that might happen automatically. And I would say that you would probably need to go to an even more ultra micro zone to say that, because you're still in 15 minutes, you're then going to pass a lot more people and a lot more, not diversity, but a lot more repetition of more of the same that you could have experienced with a richer, deeper engagement at a more micro level. So I'm not saying don't leave your block. That's not what I'm saying, but it's something like that. If I could walk down the street to my local shops, which are really shit, by the way, I would love them to be amazing. I've heard stories from the old people in the neighborhood saying there used to be a grocer and a fishmonger and all this stuff down there. It was an amazing little place to go and get all of your weekly shop, but at the quality that you're looking for. That's not there anymore, but it could be if everyone didn't go out of area to shop and we all sort of said, this is what we are going to do and get on with it. The reason I touch on that as a thing about social isolation, I think we want to go and socialize with the people we want to be involved in. But none of them are in our neighborhood. None of them are our neighbors anymore. And so it kind of, for me, raises a really big question about, well, why not? And what is happening there? So the internet has been a great saving grace in this outbreak, but I think high-speed international travel and the internet has kind of caused the spread in the first place. Like society building up to this level of being able to so quickly disseminate information and humans. If we were much slower at that, a small outbreak might happen and people die. Okay, that's really bad, but it's not the whole world. It would die down, so to speak, before it gets to. So does that mean build walls? No, I think it means build structures to keep bonds inward looking and having double and triple and quadruple connections into the same space. So can I do a quick story about Japan?
Oh, yes, please do.
Japan does full employment, right? This concept of full employment. So people doing.
What does it mean? I don't.
Yeah, so there's a lot of this rhetoric in the West, and especially around the agile work that we do, about automating a certain level so that we can get onto more meaningful work. And I think what a conceited, condescending attitude that is, to say that some work is less meaningful than other work. By the way, it's a Ponzi anyway, right? It's a race to the bottom, because you just get onto more work and more. Just slow down and do the important slow work as well. So in Japan, they're like, okay, well, we want everyone to feel like they're part of the community, everyone to have a meaningful role and to contribute. So there are people sweeping the streets. There are people doing lots of ticket checking and manual stuff that we would say, well, why don't you just automate that? There's a human aspect to that, about being meaningful and contributing, but also as you move through your day, there's people you greet and you form bonds with. And if they're in your neighborhood, you're now making and building relationships with all of those people, and not, plucking yourself out and moving over to another little silo, the CBD, for the day and then coming back. You're touching all the way through. And another little story there, I heard about how if I ever went and rented an apartment or bought a property in Japan, for example, I heard about how that works, and I thought, oh, it sounds awful, because you go and there's an agent and you have to pay a gratuity, and then you pay the actual buy price, but then you've got to pay this other person all this money because they helped you. And so there's all, like, you're paying all these people for kind of doing nothing. There's like 12 people clipping a ticket in this one process. And I always thought that that was super, super dumb. But I've really changed my mind, done a full 180 on that. And I really think it's a super good idea. And I'll tell you why. One, it's the full employment. Everyone's providing value. It's building the bonds all the way along the way. But the most important reason is, if any one of those persons sort of drops the ball on quality, they miss out individually. So I'm building a house at the moment, and it's the complete opposite of that. It's every man for himself, optimizing their own time. And if something doesn't go, like if they drop the ball a little bit, it will affect someone downstream, they don't care because they still get their money. So the idea of having all these people clipping the ticket, they only get it if everyone's satisfied all the way through.
That sounds really good.
Sorry, I've done like 10.
Oh no, that's really good, especially the house analogy. While you're speaking of Japan, I'm not sure if I have the right idea. Do you think Japan has more enterprises than startups? And if so, how do they practice agile in larger enterprises? And the reason that I'm asking is that at the same time, like design thinking, we have design thinking, but I think design thinking should be, like, not should be, needs a different method to be applied in enterprise. Because in enterprise, it's naturally, there will be a lot of people and lots of silos naturally. We cannot complain that, oh, we are broken into silos. We just need to change the mechanism to apply the design thinking in an enterprise. Same for agile. What does it mean?
Oh, I don't know. Okay, so firstly, I haven't been to Japan. I'm not an expert. I haven't studied it. I'm just speaking way out of school here. So with the thing about the full employment, although I think that's accurate. My understanding of the culture and having some interactions, I did work with a multinational that was out of Japan, and they did do a few things a little bit unusually. PowerPoint decks were the one formal business document. If you didn't do a proposal or like down to the statement of work level for signing off in a PowerPoint, you were nothing. So to do it any other way, you were a weirdo and just not accepted. And I thought that was unusual, because we talk about death by PowerPoint, we all laugh at it. But it's almost like the top quality standard there, or was. So that's a bit unusual. And I think I don't know the stats, but gut feel says way more enterprise. It would have to be way more enterprise, because my understanding is that innovation would come from the company R&D, formal processes, rather than entrepreneurial individuals outside of that system. The company man is a big thing there, right? Where you go, you do the job, you work hard, and all of that. Even aside from all of the great innovation that's come out of the Toyota way and the lean production system or whatever. So what was your last thing about design thinking? Yeah. So if we think, my answer to design thinking and agile, if you're in a really localized context, sure, you can focus design thinking in on the person and the product and iterate out of that, and that's fine. Same with agile. Scrum, when done in ways that I don't think, which is common, but I don't think is particularly amazing, is a little bit localized and a little bit, the world is against us, we're doing it right, and you can't, I think they want to control all the things, and if your context is small enough, you can, but that's not enterprise, that's not the world that we live in. So you need to raise your level of abstraction around what is the exact problem and the nature of the system that we're working on here. So design thinking or agile, same thing. So instead of thinking about design thinking as, well, how do we just understand a user and how do we understand and define some problems and test them? That's not really that's not really my view of design thinking. I think of design thinking more as an action-based exploration of the context, right? So you do action in order to better understand the context. When we're back to sense making, right? So we're back to sense making, really. And people think, again, about design thinking being, well, let's focus on the user and the problem. I think that's kind of not accurate. We define those things by doing stuff, which is really solutions. We're doing solutions and then understanding the problems better. But that's kind of been lost in translation along the way. So the really upstream stuff, we don't know what we don't know. So you need to take action in order to learn. And if we want it, look, maybe we should do a session on Cynefin framework and around the complexity and chaos end of the spectrum, where you need to act and probe before you can learn. I think there are others diving into that subject in better videos than this, to be honest. But that's what it is for me, Sakib. Rather than saying one user, one problem, one solution, it's the understanding the problem, if you want to call it that, problem or opportunity, is about understanding all the links and the context, and then what actions might we take in that. And that's the link between those two things is kind of design thinking or agile or lean or something.
Right. Sounds sounds really good. I think that yes, we means like the world needs to put more attention on how to practice agile and design thinking in an enterprise environment, instead of saying that this is design thinking. It's not, like we have to adapt it for the enterprises. Would be good if we can create a good practice there. Explore.
Wyke, my favorite sense-making guy, has created a framework called High Reliability Organizations, HROs, and there are 5 principles for that. Oh no, now I've set myself up to forget what they are. And basically it talks about sensing and responding. So there's first you need to be able to sense, and I think about design thinking in this way. How are we open enough to sense what's going on in the world, and then how do we respond in a resilient way? I think that's a fairly well articulated incarnation of what we're talking about. I mean, let's not call it design thinking, but I think it's pretty good.
Definitely.
And by the way, a lot of the thinkers around it are saying there's 2 views, by the way. So this high reliability organizations thing, and I'll put a link in the notes. There's some arguments against it, saying, well, that's for highly predictable environments where we know the processes and we know all of the things that can occur, and we can we can map it all out ahead of time. I would argue that that's not correct. I think if you think about the application of design thinking or the application of sensing and responding, you can bring it up another couple of levels. The examples that they give are hospitals and aircraft carriers as 2 really key examples to where it's been successful. And those are both high reliability organizations, because if something small goes wrong on an aircraft carrier, that's it. Like it turns into a big problem. And same with hospitals. But if you think about the complexity and the changing environment that those are both exposed to, you can't predict everything. So I feel there's actually an opportunity for us in organizations who are facing who knows what, including COVID-19 and other things. And we've had 2 in recent times, by the way, COVID-19 and the financial crisis. Both of them were like, oh, it's a black swan. Oh, we weren't expecting that. Oh, how could we have known? Well, that's kind of the point. So you need to structure yourself in a way that can sense that. And so to me, that's design thinking, that's agile. I sound like I'm the guy on the castle, don't I? Right? It's the vibe of the thing,
No, it all sounds good. You stopped me before from this, but I was about to jump into the stove in the office. I want one because I can make my omelette. I can boil and brew my tea the way that I want. But what was your original reason for having it there?
So in this book, there are some key concepts in this book. One of them being the idea of self-management and autonomy. In creating a really progressive and modern organization that can respond to complexity, but is also satisfying to the people who are involved in it. It doesn't feel like a drudgery going to work. And the second point, first point, autonomy and self-management. The second point being whole person. How do I bring my whole person to work, and how do I have that respected and utilized, not just tolerated? It's not, oh, let's let all the weirdos come and talk about their diversity and, bake some or cook some weird dishes from their, native country or something like that. It's so condescending to do it in that way. It's really at the individual level to say every complex component of you as a person is welcome and valued here, and we'll shape what we do around that rather than a really narrow job description. So to that end, it talked about in this book about how kitchens in offices are kind of missing the one thing that makes a home, and that is that people can come together and do the act of cooking and the eating together. So we kind of do the eating a little bit, but what are you eating? A crappy sandwich wrapped in paper. And you do it at different times and whatever. So the idea that people in an office could come together around a proper stove or an oven or both and really spend time cooking together, the bonds that come from that would be fantastic. And the whole person sharing that would occur as a byproduct of that, and the direct whole person being shared, which is here's something that I like to cook, and here's something that I can do for you, and we can serve each other in that way, and literally and metaphorically, and that's kind of what I'm going for there, Sakib. But then I started to think in recent times, well, kind of, how is that different from what's happening now with everyone working from home? So I'm really for that idea. I think it's really amazing. But pause that for a sec and look at what is life like in my household now. It's awful because I'm trying to do work, but I'm also having to participate in cooking during the day and cleaning up that and looking after and serving the children in that respect. And my wife does a lot of it and I do some of it as well. And, I work more than she does, so I kind of balance it out a little bit. But I'm very much involved, and you're here, you're present. So the idea of the social personal expectations of participating and contributing is high because you're present. So what would happen in an office if we had a kitchen there, all this amazing stuff, but then would there be unusual and unhappy tensions because of our broader expectations about what work needs to be? So does it mean I need to just evolve my expectations of myself and help others to evolve their expectations around what does working from home look like now and moving forward? Does that mean do some work, go down there, cook and have a nice time together, come back up, do some work, might get interrupted. The children who were watching TV before might bust in that door at any time. I feel like I'm living under an oppressive regime, and someone could come busting in at any time, and the jig is up. Really, what do you think about all that? Because I'm really for the stove in the office. I think it gives you what you want to do. It says, by the way, we are a family. We care about each other. But now I'm home, kind of the same thing, and it stinks.
Yes, there could it be because of who you're cooking for? Because at home, working from home, you're cooking for people who are actually dependent on what you'll cook.
Yeah.
You don't share the same work.
Yes.
So even though you are living under the same roof, in the same home, same family, but your heart is somewhere else at work, and then you're going back there to cook for them because you have to, and then you're coming back to work. While at work, it could be the other reason that the book actually first proposed, as you say, that what would happen if we have the stove where people get to cook. I actually got something else came up in my mind as you were saying that how do people cook and cooking the food that they're doing, because cooking and eating, and this goes back to your last week's topic of arranged marriage.
Oh yeah, good.
Yeah, in Bangladesh or even in other countries, they used to interview a groom by inviting the groom to a lunch and then see that how does he serve himself and how does he use his, like my grandfather used to say that he checks that how much rice do they take with how much meat and how much vegetables, to understand that do they eat the meat first and then run out and take more meat, or so the meat is considered like the really essential or valuable gold thing that's delicious, tempting, versus person who's balanced, and he would actually judge his grooms. And I know many other stories like that they would judge by the way they serve themselves and the way they consume the food and stuff. So that could actually give more insights, but I don't know.
Well, my personal story is that a lot of those official signals that you learn in your family as a child, and you are an extension of your family, and that was
yes
before. I kind of didn't learn. There's a lot of those ones that I didn't learn. So later in life, I've made them a more conscious effort, but I often forget. And so what the impact can be is that maybe a misjudgment occurs if you only have one or two samples with that person.
right.
If you only have the one lunch, you might get the wrong idea. But I think I'm safe to say that I personally often give a bit of a abrasive impression to people in the first one or two, but after a couple of interactions, there's a deeper empathy and a deeper side that comes through in different actions. So I think maybe it's a bit like the narrow data that then making judgments about alcohol consumption. If you're only looking at meat and rice ratio
yes.
in one setting, and also not over time, I would worry. I think they're okay. Those patterns are okay. But I would want to have maybe a bit more of a sample than a one-off.
Right.
That's only because I feel like I've been misjudged.
Yes. Well, yes. Well, yeah, that's probably sort of an interview that father-in-laws used to do, just like how we interview candidates, just by, a slice of time.
That's a good segue to that, right?
Yeah.
The interviews that we do are probably.
But yeah, is there a better alternative? We don't know.
Yeah, I do have an idea. I think it's that we need to have like a middle gray zone where you're not in the company, you're not out of the company yet. So how do we spend time together getting to know multiple data points and getting a vibe? And if it never goes anywhere, it never goes anywhere. But if you become a very well understood and desirable person to join the company, then you kind of start to get to the front of a queue, so to speak. It seems a bit weird to say queue. You would be known, and you wouldn't need to go through an interview process because we already know about you. We know how you think and how you would operate. I worry about interviews being too narrow and too much of a single slice of time. Someone might just be having a bad day, and then opportunities for them and for us are lost. Yeah.
Right.
Sorry,
yeah. I was saying, talking about slice of time. Our slice of time is almost ending. And please don't judge us by this slice of time only, because those who are watching.
Yeah, you have to watch 5 of these episodes. We've only got 2 now, so watch 5 and see if you see what you think. Just some footnotes. I've been in the back of my mind thinking these conversations and anecdotes are great, but we do need to get serious and do maybe in a 30-minute recording, do a 15-minute chunk in the middle that is a bit of a deep dive into one of these concepts. For example, the high reliability organizations is something I'm very passionate about and relates to design thinking and sense making as well. I would be interested to unpack that a little bit for everyone. Saqib, you've got some topics, telehealth, which is topical at the moment. What was the other one?
Persuasive technologies.
Yeah.
For behavior change. Yeah. Model thinking and system thinking, why we need them.
Yeah, I really like that one as well. So we need to think about, okay, how do we take people through a process and give them something to take away and use straight away? Because remember, you read it or you watch it on our video and then you go and apply it straight away. Is your goal to help people to do that?
Right, exactly.
So how do we do that next time? So if you've been liking the vibe, stick around and come back for that. Also, shout at us and tell us what you do want to hear about. If you heard a little snippet of a thing and you think, well, that sounds really interesting, I want to know how to do it, then great, let us know. I think that probably about it, unless, do we want to do anything else, Akib?
Well, I was thinking, why don't we go on a trip? Because while everybody is staying at home, we are going on a trip to Fiji.
Yeah, let's go on a trip, and we'll wrap it up after that.
Yeah. Yes, because I don't know when will be the next flight.
Do you want to talk us through what's going on here?
Oh, yes. All right. So welcome on the... Yes. Yes, that captain is not the one. I'm the one. Okay. Welcome. I'm your captain. Welcome on board the Fiji Airlines. This is the only flight this year that will take you on a holiday. I hope you enjoy your flight. You don't need to fasten your seat belts. You may have to put on your masks. As you can see, the weather is really good outside, and just right after our vodcast, we are really sipping on... Mike is sipping on a glass of Moscato. I'm having my regular vodka. Oh, yeah, that's what we were doing.
Yeah.
And yeah, if we put on the sound,
Oh yeah,
it was coming from the hair dryer. So this YouTube video was put by somebody in Spain, and there are similar others on done by some others. What was interesting here is that perception and sense making, because as you say that I am an extension of my family, even though I haven't spent much time with them, but I make sense of the current moment based on my past, probably. And when we started that video, I would say that the first thing that came to my mind is, instead of asking why is it happening, where is it happening, this is it. I am in a flight. That's the flight window, just based on the shape. What do you think of perception and sense making, and the role of perception in sense making?
Yeah, it's massive. You know, the perception starts with the physical. You know, I did an intro to psychology MOOC about 10 years ago, and it went for ages just about the eye, like how the rods and cones work in the eyes and how you see things, and this other weird thing about how when something happy happens, you smile first, then your brain gets the message good. That's really interesting to me. So there's a physiological aspect driving a lot of it. So perception just starts from that. Who are you as a physical thing interacting with the world? So what that's saying is all of those expectations around, oh, that was you were looking through a plane window. You didn't even have to consciously analyze it's a window. Just straight away, I know I'm on a flight. But is that true? So stepping back and saying, well, what do we know about our own perceptions helps. Sense making is all about the perception that's occurring to begin with. But so what's interesting about sense making is there's some perceptions that happen first, the information goes in, then you reflect on it continually after and create plausible stories out of that. So you can either build on that or reject it and change it as well. So that's kind of an interesting point, that it's not just at the time. There's this perception. Perception is probably not the right word, but I start thinking about plausible story building that happens afterwards. And then you can go back and revisit and change or whatever. And you have to use that for your next action in the world.
Right. Exactly. I also think that sense making happens based on pattern thinking, because we already have seen things and learned, and then we have a pattern in there. But it's so easy to use that pattern by having a first glance at something and saying, oh, this is that labeling of, yeah.
Well, maybe we should do a deeper dive in another as well, because this could go on. But the last, I wanted to add something as well. It's interesting you say the way you word that, and I would word it the same way. We use pattern matching because it's easier and we don't have to give it a second thought. If we didn't do that, we'd be crippled all day, having to deeply analyze everything. You wouldn't get through. There's so much information, so we're constantly filtering out information and taking shortcuts. I know what that is, rather than having to unpack it. And organizations, by the way, are kind of a bit like that. You have your cowboy visionary jocks almost going, I know already what to do. And then you've got the other end of the spectrum, the deeply analytical ones who want to pull everything apart and and understand. I think there's a time and a place for a bit of both, and they need to come together. Yeah.
Sounds good.
On that note, should we wrap it up? Let's give everyone an opportunity to give feedback and throw tomatoes at us. We should come up with maybe 3 options for a deep dive next time. HR
Yes.
is one for me. We'll do some of yours as well, so that we've got a balance, and we'll get through them all over time as well.
Sounds perfect.
Cool. Thanks for dressing up. Should we do bow ties next time?
My bow tie didn't arrive yet. Yeah.
So
yeah,
but I
hopefully.
think we both do it. I think maybe I need to have a show as well for next time. So thanks for listening. Oh, by the way, I've got a subscription Substacky thing over there. And by the way, I've got 1 subscriber since last week, so I'm really happy about that. Just feels really interesting and good to have legitimate subscribers other than my friends doing it. So to that person, hey, you know who you are. So thanks everyone. Join us next time.
Thank you. Thanks everyone.